We've been here for nearly 25 years. We have nearly 4 acres and we keep livestock. We live on the top of a hill, so we get an amazing view and all the weather that comes with it. I really like being in the elements, I think. I work it quite exposed way. Even when I go into my workshop in the winter, I might, not have any heating and I might just leave the doors open, and I don't really mind. I quite enjoy that. I would describe my work as mainly thrown with highly textured and fluid glazes. I try to keep a vibrancy in the colours to try and let the kiln make as high an impact on the work as possible. So I just make simple thrown forms and try and decorate them with a glaze with the kiln. For the lidded jar, it's just like a lot of my work. I start off with a straight cylinder with a little gallery at the top, and the gallery at the top is just the space of the thickness of the walls of the lid. So when the lid comes onto the top, it just fits nicely into the gallery. So I just do that with a wooden tool with a squared edge, and I just press that gently into the top to make the gallery. And then with the same rib, I go along the side and just try and smooth it out as straight as I can, because I don't go back afterwards and turn it or work on it afterwards. It's just 3 pulls, straighten it out, dry it off with a sponge, and that's it done. When I throw the lid, I'll measure with the calipers a couple of times, and when I'm throwing it, I'll always be cross-checking with the calipers. So I make sure I get the base right, at the right thickness before I throw the walls up to the top. So then I'll throw the walls up to the top, make the lid not too high, and then when it's all nice and finished, I'll just take a little turning tool and incise a little groove on the inside of the lid. And that helps me when I come back to glaze it, that I can pour some glaze into the lid, swirl the lid round, and it just gets caught by that little groove, and I get a nice clean edge on my glazing. After I've finished making the pots, then they're biscuit fired before I glaze them or put any slips on. When I come to glaze the work, I'll pour glaze on the inside of the pots, and that's just a normal vitreous glaze, and that's just the one I use, mostly a high feldspar glaze. And I'll just pour it in, tip it all out, clean it round to the edge, and then I go to spraying my slips on. And the first 2 things I do is I spray a base slip, which is made of a porcelain clay with a vanadium pentoxide in it. And then afterwards I'll spray a titanium slip over the top of that, and they melt at different temperatures, and it causes the black to stay as a base and then the white to move over the top of it and to cause a textured rippled effect. Sometimes dribbling down, or sometimes just being like a heavy orange peel effect. Then on some of the pots, I'll take an ash glaze and I'll spray the ash glaze just on the top of the pot. And then when the salt hits it in the firing, the ash will flux and run down. Once the pots are glazed and slipped, then I clean the bottom with just a sponge, and then all the pots, when they're placed in the kiln, are put on little balls of wadding, which stops the bases touching the shelves, because the salt covers everything in the kiln. And if they weren't raised off the shelf, then they'd all stick to the shelves. And it's the same when I make a lidded jar or a teapot. I'll put bits of wadding as padding between the lid and the main body of the pot, and that will stop them sticking together. On my kiln that I fire at the moment, it's a converted old electric kiln. I have 2 just basic kind of large Bunsen burners that go into the kiln through the floor. And I fire at about 150, 200 degrees an hour till 600 degrees, and then I'll just turn up the kiln as fast as I can. And really I'm doing a very fast firing, and when it's all dry and working properly, I can do the whole firing in 8 or 9 hours. After it's 600, I go full speed as fast as I can build the heat up inside the kiln. And then when it reaches to about 1260, then I'll introduce the first lot of salt. I put in 1.5 kilos of salt in 4 batches over an hour while I hold it at the full temperature. So when the kiln's at full temperature and the 1260 cone's just going, I have a copper pipe with a 90-degree bend on it and a bit of rubber hose, and I fill up the up to the elbow of the pipe with salt, and I put it under the floor of the kiln next to the burner, and with one puff I just blow the salt into the kiln. And in that way I'm hoping that it will instantaneously fly over to all the pots where the flame's dancing over the top of them. And then, just to check at the end of the firing, I'll have a test ring inside the kiln, and I can take the test ring out and I can see how shiny it is and how much salt it's picked up to check that I've put in enough salt. Well, opening the kiln's always exciting. It's like Christmas, you know, that's the best bit of it. It's taking it all out, and I always think when you take a pot out of the kiln, at that moment, that's the best it looks, I think, you know. If you take it out in the sun and it's nice and warm and the sun's catching it, then, you know, you feel you've done a good job then. It's so nice when you meet people and they say, oh, I've used your mug every day for the last 3 years. You know, and then you think, oh yeah, and you're forming a connection with people that when they buy it, so they don't realise that they're going to fall in love with one of your pieces. And that's super flattering, isn't it? You know, that's great. And that's why I really like making functional stuff, you know, like mugs. I know, mugs are my bread and butter, you know, it's a simple way to connect with people. They can touch it, they put it to their mouth, they use it every day, it doesn't just sit on a shelf. You know, I always joke with people when they buy a mug and I go, well, you know what you're going to do with it. It's not just going to sit on a shelf, and that's, you know, and I quite like that. It's, you know, that's quite important to me, that there's something kind of no fuss. It doesn't need explaining.